I think wrestling is definitely one of the most underappreciated sports. I think a lot of people have some different misconceptions of it, don't understand the hard work and training that goes into it. My name is Daniel Miller. I come from the United States. I live and train in North Carolina right now. And I originally started wrestling inspired by my uncle. I was guilty of not understanding Greco-Roman before I started wrestling it. I have a background in freestyle. When I wrestled freestyle, I didn't understand why people wrestled Greco-Roman, and now that I wrestle it, I understand and I can see things that I didn't notice before. I think it's really an education thing. You know, wrestling isn't appreciated, you know, the way that it should be, but I think it's just a lack of understanding from the general populace. Right now, I'm in the United States Marine Corps. I'm a ground supply officer. So prior to coming over to the Marine Corps wrestling team, I worked with 1st Battalion 8th Marines, basically running their warehouse and budgetary concerns. But now that I'm on the wrestling team, I do primary job is training while also taking care of administrative and financial responsibilities for the wrestling program.
Warm up.
Right now, we're at a training camp here in France at INSEP. This is probably the most valuable time and way that we train is coming overseas, getting different partners, training different positions, training under different coaches that do different exercises. In my normal life, you know, my free time, I grew up near a beach, so I like a lot of water sports. I like to surf. I like to go look for seashells and shark teeth on the beach. I like to go out on my boat, pretty much like anything with a small engine on it. Motorcycles, cars, scooters. I've probably ridden one, had one, or worked on it. My Uncle Billy was one of my role models growing up, and the only sport he ever did was wrestling. And then he passed away from diabetes, and then I started doing the sport, and I started really liking it. I also played football in high school, and wrestling just kind of has that tough one-on-one grinder mentality that I really fit into and stuck with it, you know, for the rest of my life. In the United States, I didn't start wrestling until I was in high school, so I wrestled folk style through high school and college. When we were in college, I got introduced to freestyle by our head coach, Bruce Burnett. And then once I got out of college and was in the Marine Corps, then I came over and got introduced to the Greco-Roman program. So initially I was a little bit hesitant about training Greco-Roman because my background was in folk style and freestyle, but since then I've grown to, have a passion for it, and it's definitely the most enjoyable, and I think probably the most technical out of the three styles. So I didn't start wrestling Greco until October of 2015. And in January 2016, I took a bronze medal out at in Zagreb, Croatia for their Grand Prix. So considering the time that I had to train leading up to that tournament and the performance that I had there, that qualified me for Olympic team trials in the US last year. So with all those things added in, that was probably my best performance so far. My best memory is definitely traveling with the team and with the guys and the camaraderie that we have. So we have a lot of great experiences together that probably top the performances I have at this point. But that's just because of the tight brotherhood that we have in the wrestling community. The wrestling is still enjoyable. I love the sport, I have a passion for it, but I love the guys who are around me as well, and they're the ones who get me through the grind every day. If you're having a bad day, on the mat, off the mat, or whatever you're going through, those are the guys who are going to help me push through. Obviously you have to have a certain amount of mental dexterity to get through a wrestling practice, a little bit of craziness, as some people would say. But at the end of the day, it's the guys who are on the mat with me, going through it at the same time. They're the guys who are helping me through that stuff. I'm definitely friendly with a lot of people from different countries. I think social media has played a big part in that. Like I said, I've only been training in the sport for maybe a year and a half, and in that year and a half, I've developed multiple friends overseas from different countries. Whether I've competed with them multiple times or especially at training camps. Wrestlers just they get along. You have the same mentality. You're going through the same stuff, and generally there's just good people. So. I've definitely developed friends overseas. I've developed friends in the US, on my team, off my team. Wrestlers they flock together.
kilos, Christian Jönsson, Sweden in red, and Chase Pami from the USA in blue.
Les pistolets, vous êtes là?
Match to come. Next match.
The United States is pretty good at freestyle, and the United States has historically been up and down in Greco-Roman. So, you know, collectively, I think that we compete well. I think that right now we're going through an ebb period with Greco-Roman wrestling, and you know, we're building back up to where we can flow and compete the way we did a few years ago when we won a world title as a team. So we're building back to that right now. But as far as, you know, freestyle and folk style go, I would agree and say that, you know, we're one of the premier countries in the world. Greco-Roman, we're going to get back there. The #1 way to get better at wrestling is to wrestle, and to wrestle in different positions and learn those positions and gain the experience. There's no substitute for experience. So coming over here, it just allows us to get information from a broader array of sources of information. And so that's what we're trying to do over here. We try to do it as often as possible, but obviously, you know, as much as money will let us.